Amy Archer-Gilligan, a nursing home proprietor in Windsor, Connecticut, was a serial killer who poisoned at least 5 people, including her second husband, Michael Gilligan, between 1907 and 1917. Her Archer home for the elderly and infirm became a death trap, with 48 residents dying in just 5 years, many after signing over their wealth. In this documentary, we'll dissect her chilling crimes through the lens of psychology and psychoanalysis, unraveling the mind behind a murder factory. Why Amy Archer-Gilligan? Why drag this ghost from the shadows of the early 1900s? Her case is a psychological abyss, a twisted study of greed and deception wrapped in a caregiver's smile. Amy didn't hack her victims with an axe or stalk them in the night. She killed with a subtler, more sinister weapon: poison. Imagine this. An elderly man, Franklin Andrews, sips his lemonade on a warm May day in 1914, chatting with Sister Amy, the kind widow who runs his nursing home. Hours later, he's writhing, his stomach burning, his breath slowing as arsenic eats him from the inside. By morning, he's dead, his body cold on a cot. Across town, Amy counts the $500 he loaned her, her face calm, her hand steady. She poisoned her husband, Michael, watching him choke on strychnine, then forged his will. At least 5 confirmed victims, possibly dozens more, died by her hand, their bodies laced with arsenic or strychnine, their bank accounts drained. Her nursing home, dubbed a murder factory by the Hartford Courant, wasn't a sanctuary. It was a slaughterhouse, making her a prime subject for peeling back the psyche of a female serial killer. Step into Windsor, Connecticut, 1907. The Archer home for the elderly and infirm sits on Prospect Street, a charming brick house with ivy climbing its walls. Inside, Amy Archer-Gilligan, a petite woman with a soft voice and a churchgoer's piety, welcomes frail residents with promises of care. Born Amy E. Duggan on October 31st, 1873, in Milton, Connecticut, she was the 8th of 10 children in a working-class family. Little is known of her childhood, but hints of instability linger. One brother was committed to an asylum in 1890, and a sister was paralyzed after leaping from the family home's roof, suggesting a family shadowed by mental illness. Psychologists might see this as a red flag for genetic predisposition to disorders like antisocial personality disorder, where empathy is scarce and manipulation is second nature. Amy attended Milton School and briefly studied at New Britain Normal School, but her education was patchy, her nursing claims unverified. By 1897, she married James Archer, a laborer, and had a daughter, Mary, later that year. They scraped by, taking caretaker jobs, but Amy's ambition burned hotter than her means. What turned her into a killer? Psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud might point to repressed greed, a buried hunger for control and wealth that festered in her psyche. Amy's early life wasn't marked by overt trauma, but her family's poverty and crowded home likely bred resentment. Evolutionary psychologists, like Marissa Harrison, note that female serial killers like Amy often kill for profit, unlike male counterparts driven by sexual motives. Nearly 40% of FSKs show signs of mental illness, and Amy's calculated cruelty suggests a blend of narcissistic personality disorder and psychopathy. MPD involved a grandiose self-image and a need for admiration, while psychopathy included a chilling lack of remorse. Amy's public persona, devout, caring, a church donor, clashed with her private acts, a classic mass of sanity, for psychologist Hervey Cleckley. By 1901, Amy and James were caretakers for John Seymour in Newington, Connecticut. His death in 1904 left him his home, which they turned into a boarding house for the elderly. In 1907, they moved to Windsor, opening the Archer home. James died in 1910 of kidney failure, leaving Amy with a 12-year-old daughter and debts. A 1909 lawsuit for neglect cost them $5,000, worth over $130,000 today, pushing Amy to the edge. Psychologists might argue this financial strain triggered a stress-induced decompensation, where her latent psychopathy surfaced. In 1913, she married Michael Gilligan, a wealthy widower who invested in her home. 3 months later, he was dead, his death certificate citing an acute bilious attack. A forged will, later proven to be in Amy's handwriting, left her his $4,000 estate. Exhumed in 1916, his body tested positive for strychnine, a poison causing agonizing muscle spasms and suffocation. Why poison? Amy's method was deliberate, a hallmark of the angel of death typology, per FBI profiler Robert Ressler. Poison, arsenic in lemonade. Strychnine in soup was slow, silent, and mimicked natural illness. Arsenic caused vomiting, diarrhea, and organ failure, often mistaken for cholera or ulcers. Strychnine was worse, locking muscles in rigid convulsions until the victim choked. Amy bought massive quantities, claiming she needed it for rats. A local druggist later testified. She bought enough to kill 100 people for the Hartford Courant. Her victims weren't random. They were chosen for their wealth and vulnerability. Franklin Andrews, 61, died in 1914 after gardening. His death blamed on a gastric ulcer. His sister, Nellie Pierce, found letters showing Amy pressuring him for money. Alice Gowdy, Charles Smith, and Maud Lynch followed, all poisoned after signing over assets. Maud's death from strychnine was especially gruesome, her body contorted, her face frozen in a scream, per police reports. Authorities suspected up to 60 deaths, with 48 between 1911 and 1916, a staggering jump from 12 in the prior 4 years. Psychoanalytically, Amy's crimes reflect projection, casting her own desperation onto her victims. She saw them as means to an end, not people. Her dehumanization of victims, a trait of psychopathy, let her poison with a smile. Evolutionary theory suggests FSKs like Amy gather resources, killing those closest husbands' boarders for profit, unlike male hunters like Jeffrey Dahmer. Amy's caregiving role was a perfect cover, exploiting trust. A 1916 undercover investigator, Zola Bennett, reported residents living in fear, with Amy swindling them for loans. Lucy Doran, a resident, accused Amy of neglect, telling Courant, "She'd smile at you, then ignore your cries for help." Amy's motive was clear, financial gain. She charged $1,000 for lifetime care, ensuring quick deaths to maximize turnover. Her daughter, Mary, later testified to Amy's morphine addiction, suggesting a substance-induced disinhibition that dulled any lingering guilt. The body count grew, but Amy's charm held suspicion at bay. She sent flowers to victims' families, paid for funerals, and played the grieving widow. Dr. Howard King, the home's physician, certified deaths as natural, possibly complicit, or naive. A 1914 Podges podcast quote a neighbor, "Nobody wanted to believe Sister Amy was a killer. She was too kind, too Christian." But cracks formed. Franklin Andrews' sister, Nellie, went to the district attorney, who ignored her. Undeterred, she contacted the Hartford Courant, which ran a May 9, 1916, exposé titled "Police Believe Archer Home for Age a Murder Factory." The article screamed, 60 deaths in 5 years, 48 since 1911. Police exhumed 5 bodies, all laced with poison. Merchants confirmed Amy's arsenic purchases, and Zola Bennett's undercover work exposed squalid conditions and coercion. Amy's arrest on May 8, 1916, shocked Windsor. Her 1917 trial was a media circus, with crowds packing the Hartford courthouse. Charged with 5 murders, her lawyer reduced it to 1, Franklin Andrews' death. On June 18, 1917, she was convicted and sentenced to hang. A 1919 retrial saw her plead insanity, with Mary claiming Amy's morphine addiction warped her mind. The jury didn't buy it, convicting her of second-degree murder and sentencing her to life. In 1924, declared temporarily insane, she was moved to the Connecticut Hospital for the Insane in Middletown, where she died on April 23, 1962, at 88, rambling about her poor old men. What drove Amy? Psychoanalyst Melanie Klein might call it a paranoid schizoid position, splitting the world into good and evil. Her narcissism demanded wealth and status, but her psychopathy let her kill without blinking. The McDonald triad, bedwetting, fire-setting, animal cruelty, often predicts violence, but Amy showed none of these. Instead, her covert aggression, for psychologist Otto Kernberg, surfaced in poison, a weapon of control. Her victim selection, elderly, trusting, wealthy, reflects a predatory pragmatism, targeting those least likely to fight back. Her methods, slow and intimate, suggests a sadistic streak, savoring the power of watching life fade. A 1916 Courant reporter wrote, "She'd sit by their beds, reading scripture as they gasped their last." Her crimes, inspired by profit, were enabled by a society blind to a woman's capacity for evil. Amy's downfall came from hubris. She underestimated Nellie Pierce's resolve and the Courant's reach. Her arrest and then the horror. Families grieve and Windsor's trust shattered. A 1916 resident told police, "I saw her pour something in the lemonade. I was too scared to speak." Amy's story inspired the play Arsenic and Old Lace, but the real tale is no comedy. Philosophically, her life echoes Nietzsche's abyss. She gazed into darkness, and it consumed her. Existentialist Jean-Paul Sartre might argue her freedom to choose evil defined her, but her mental illness muddies the waters. Was she a calculating predator, or a mind unraveled by greed and addiction? Hannah Arendt's banality of evil fits best. Amy wasn't a cartoonish villain, but a woman who normalized murder, her crimes chillingly ordinary. Amy's legacy is a warning. Her murder factory exposed the fragility of trust and the horror of betrayal. As you watch, check your locks and question the smiles around you. Evil doesn't always scream. It whispers, like Sister Amy, offering a glass of lemonade.